Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a different kind of, not character spotlight, although it's taking the time slot of one. Today, we are talking about the current kind of menace in the meta, Cosmic Ghost Rider. I'm joined by Reed, who is going to help share some of his experiences and solutions to this model. And we're going to try really hard this video to avoid spending any time really wish listing changes on him or complaining about how this, that, and the other thing is broken. Instead, we want to spend time with this video trying to focus on kind of solutions to the problem. Obviously, at the end of the day, the model is definitely overtuned for the current state of the game, and you shouldn't have to go to particularly extreme lengths to get around this model. But in his current state, we want to kind of talk about some of the ways you can play around him, some of the ways to play into him so maybe it doesn't feel as bad. Of course, dice notwithstanding, but yeah, just some kind of potential solutions and counters to this model in the current meta. So, first things first, we got to go over what this model is. So Cosmic Ghost Rider is coming in at 444 defensively. He's got 9 stamina, and I believe it's 7 on the back. Yeah, 7 on the back.
Yes.
6 threat. He's size 3. He's going to be a medium mover, and yeah, so out the gate there, solid line. 444 is great. For a 6 threat, I mean that's somewhat expected. 9-7 also coming in with total of what, 16 health, and it's front loaded, which is always good. Then he's got 2 attacks here. He's got his blasters. These are range 4 6 dicers, and they're just going to gain him 1 power. They're not a builder, so immediately, honestly, this model doesn't even seem that good. Then he's got Power Cosmic Pendant Stare. This is going to be a 6 cost, 12 dice, Mystic Spender, range 2, but the target character doesn't gain power, and it's got this wild trigger here of every symbol except blank. And you change all of your target's shields to skulls, which is a little rude, but honestly, it's a 12 dice mystic attack. It's kind of overkill to begin with. Um,
Yeah,
then
usually that trigger is a bit over, like, you don't need it.
I don't think I've seen one time where that trigger's actually mattered yet, but it's
Yeah.
there. Then he's got his little movement shenanigans here. So he pays X power to place himself range X. So pay 5 power, range 5 place. Pretty good. Um, One of the best movement abilities in the game, probably. Not in a distance to power ratio, but just in terms of like pure versatility, I guess. It's right up there with Ulik, I think, for like his charge, and then of course his, pay 3 to teleport 5. Then he's got
It's up
Chains of Citak. This is going to cost him 2. He's going to pick a character within 3 of this character and push it towards him small. Note that this doesn't specify enemy character. Then the chosen character is lit on fire, and a character can only be affected by the superpower once per turn. And right out of the gate, we're going to jump into one of the things that makes this model somewhat problematic is this can hit every character on the board if you have the power for it, which, I mean, you probably don't, but it can hit every character on the board. You could use it to bring your allies into the fight. You can use it to bring enemies off of points. You light your enemies on fire as well, of course. Now be careful pulling your own models because you'll light them on fire as well. And then the other fun part of this is can only be affected by the superpower once per turn has been ruled. So if you use stuff like Shield Mind off of Emma Frost or Indomitable, while it will prevent it from happening once, if he has the power to try again, he is allowed to try again on the same model because they weren't actually affected, which is an interesting ruling, but is the way it has come out. So while tech like Indomitable or Emma Frost Shield Mind, or I don't know how many other characters have Emma Frost like abilities. Does Jean Grey have something like that, Reed?
Jean Grey also has Shield Mine. Also just stuff that can't be pushed is really good against this.
Yep.
Because they will not get incinerated if they don't get pushed.
Yep.
So
So
Colossus.
Juggernaut on his front side.
Yep.
Um,
Ultron. New
Ultron.
one.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also for that matter, mind you, I don't know if they're necessarily a counter, but Sentinels. Sentinels have that as
Yeah.
well.
They also have decent stat lines against CGR, technically.
Weirdly enough, yeah, I actually, you
Yeah.
know what? We've done it. We've solved the meta. Sentinels is #1 affiliation in the game. Uh, Sorry, I can't say that with a straight face. Anyways, his next ability here is Cosmic Justice on Wheels. This costs 3 power, and basically, when an allied character is dazed or KO'd by an enemy effect, he can pay this 3 power, and he gets to make his blasters attack against them. Range force 6 dice, so that's a solid, and it's a gainer, so I mean it's really only costing him 2 power at the end of the day. Yeah, that's quite good. And then he has I'm the Spirit of Vengeance, bearer of the power cosmic, and just a bit unstable. So this is where his kit kind of revolves around. This and Ready to Roll, they're kind of similar. So during the power phase, he's going to roll 5 dice for every crit, wild, or hit, so 50% odds on those 5 dice. He's going to gain 1 power. Then if he has 5 or more power, he gains a Psychosis token and drops all objectives he is holding. At the start of the next power phase, he's going to remove his Psychosis token. So basically, during the power phase, he's going to roll for his power. If he ends up on 5 or more, he's going to get this token. But he's always going to, if he's lower than 5, he's going to not have that token for the round. Then he has Ready to Roll. So at the start of the first power phase, he automatically gets that token. And while he has a Psychosis token, he counts skulls in his attack, defense, and dodge rolls as successes. See, it doesn't even affect objectives. This isn't a very good ability. Uh, while he has a Psychosis token, he cannot hold, contest, or interact with objectives tokens. I guess it would be weird if interact rules were listed there, actually, now that I think about it.
That
But
just didn't come up.
it would, yeah, I do things like the chimichanga count as objectives.
Well, they
This
don't
is
require roll,
this is
but
getting
like
off topic, but yeah.
I don't know.
Anyways, yeah, so basically he's gonna count skulls, bringing his attack dice up to 5 and 8, and bringing his defense dice up to 4 and 8, and dodge by that extension, which is really good dice math wise. Turns out, Reality Stone is a massive deal on the models that are allowed to take it. And I mean, you've got a lot of experience, Reed, with new Cabal leadership at this point too. So even just counting 1 skull in your roll, is really powerful. So the ability to count as many as you roll is quite good, especially when you're throwing out, 6 dice attacks and then occasionally a 12 dicer here and there. So that's quite good. And then he's got flight and immunity to a huge chunk of conditions here: bleed, hex, incinerate, and poison. So he's immune to a lot of or a couple of the conditions at least that you would use to deal with this kind of model. Notably hex and incinerate.
Yeah.
Because I mean, turning off crits when you have better dice odds is actually really big. And obviously, incinerate is one of those conditions you can kind of use when it's like, okay, this model needs to come off the table now. So yeah, that's his kit. The only other thing that changes on his back is, like we mentioned, the 7 health. But otherwise, he's the exact same. So first, I guess we'll talk about why this model has kind of been a bit of a problem. And I think a lot of that comes from what he's capable of doing extremely early in the game, especially if he spikes that early power roll. If he starts the game on 4 or 5 power, this model can teleport to the middle line and pretty much be hitting your, like, if not your back points, then your deployment line right from the start of the game, basically. If he rolls good, obviously, that's a big catch to this. And this is without any support. This is ignoring the fact that in something like Guardians, he's probably got 2 dice rerolls because he's got a Winging It token, and that is one of his home affiliations. And the ability to say, these 3 models that are contesting points, they have been yanked off of those points. They're on fire. Oh, and 1 or 2 of them are dead as well, is absolutely massive. And I mean, 6 threats should have a huge impact on the field, but Cosmic Ghost Rider feels like he requires almost no support to have that huge impact, and he can do it right from the start of the game. So I think that's kind of where his main problem comes in. I don't know if you agree with that 100%, or if there's other factors you think are problematic with him, but
No, I 100% agree with that. Yeah. The first turn impact is huge.
first turn impact is massive. The fact that he, like, when you put support on him, when you give him that Winging It token, he just becomes cranked up to 11.
Yep.
I mean, just for some simple dice math here, let's go ahead and throw up the dice calculator here. Because if we go to a 6 dice attack roll, and we're going to have it counting skulls, So already, let's see, against a 3 defense no tech model, it's averaging 2.99 damage. So averaging 3 damage, give or take. So already, if you're hitting a, let's say, 4 threat that has 3 energy defense and no energy defensive tech, which there's a pretty good list of that, especially with his mobility. He can get out a martial artist and stuff a lot of the time. So it's not unreasonable for him to be doing that. On average, he can down a 4 threat in 2 shots. We add the
Yeah.
winging it into that.
I also like to point out, if you go back,
Oh,
you can notice the no rerolls maybe.
yeah, I'll have to go back to no
Yeah,
rerolls.
yeah.
Yep.
But if you look at the percentage it takes to actually kill the model,
So
so if you look
5 or
at the
6
image
health.
here, yeah, it's at like 90% and 7%. And if you add the two rerolls, someone's pointed this out to me, it doubles basically your chance to kill
Really?
one shot. Yeah,
Ooh, okay, well, we'll give it a second to calculate there, but that
that's how
that's
huge winging
crazy.
is.
Well, and
Yeah,
winging it, especially on a model that already counts skulls, right? So his math is already better. So yeah, that brings you up to a
yeah,
20% chance to one shot a 6 health model and a 41.65% chance to one shot a 5 health model. Again, 3 defense dice, no tech. So yeah, that's
yeah,
crazy good. That's really good dice math. I mean, you should at the very least be now, of course, keep in mind winging it can only be spent once, so your next roll will just be the normal math, but your odds to take down at least a 4 threat model and do absolutely nothing else are already pretty good. And I think if your model can consistently drop a 4 threat and rearrange the board the way something like Cosmic Ghost Rider does. And this is ignoring the fact that they're on fire for this because he makes them be on fire first. So your probability here is actually even higher.
yeah,
Wow, that one die actually adds a lot.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, first of all, I think that's one of the big things is when you're going into this matchup against Cosmic Ghost Rider, you got to kind of be mindful of his likelihood to just kind of kill things and kind of just as much as this feels bad, avoid bringing things with those kind of stat lines into him. If it's going to have 5 health, you want it to have a damage reduction. If it's going to have 6 health, then probably aim for, 4 dice or something like that to help you mitigate those odds a little bit, or immunity to incinerate or something like that, just to help you. Because, I mean, 30, almost 30% chance to just lose a 6 health model is still very rough. Like, I'm curious what the damage reduction does to this. I mean, in theory, it just lowers everything by 1, right?
should
Um,
yeah, it should lower the
so if your 5 health damage reduction or 6 health damage reduction, then yeah, that helps your odds a
yeah,
lot, specifically on the 6 health. I mean, something like, for example, Luke Cage, one of my favorite 3 threats, he only has a 10.4% chance to go down to something like this with a winging it. Which obviously, if he's getting attacked twice, he probably still goes down. But I think CGR spending both of his actions to take down Cage is not the end of the world, and I'm sure there's other models that could apply to. Um,
yeah. I think at the end of the day, as long as he's probably taking down one model a turn, but if you can limit it to just one model a turn,
yeah,
it starts looking a lot better.
yeah, well, because then you can really try to push the advantage of like they have 6 threat that's not scoring points, and that's kind of where the other part of this comes in. Of well, he's also in Guardians, so they're going to be able to go relatively wide still with this model. I think you can expect if you're playing against a Guardian CGR that they have at least 3 or 4 other models on the board that are scoring points. Depending on the threat and the scenario and stuff like that. Um, so I personally I'm not 100% sure whether the answer here is to try and just go wide enough that, when he takes down 1 or 2 models a turn, you're still able to outscore past those other guardians that are scoring points, or whether the answer is kind of build a taller list where he's not going to be able to consistently take down anyone on your team and then you have to kill his point scorers to keep up on scoring that way though. And I think there's merit to both, but I feel like going wide is probably the better option here, bringing, multiple like lots of 3 and 4 threat models that are kind of on the bulkier side.
Yeah, I think going wide is probably a bit safer because CGR can still spike rolls against the bigger models, and that could really hurt.
Yeah, that's the big thing because if you go for that tall kind of we're gonna play this big attrition game, you're kind of throwing the game towards the dice, which I mean, they're already going to be swingy. At the end of the day, sometimes CGR is going to spike, and he has slightly better odds to do that than anyone else because of things like winging it tokens. Um, Sometimes he's just going to spike. Sometimes that bulky model that, only dies on 10% is going to die anyways. I mean, at this point, I think both of us have had a beta ray go down in one shot to him.
Yep, yep,
Which I
that does
mean,
happen.
that's 4 dice defense, right? And he can't drop that because they're immune to incinerate.
Yep.
So it might take a second to calculate out here, but it's definitely not likely.
Yeah, I
And
will say it was a beta ray on zero power because of Eyes on the Prize, but
yeah,
it
mine
can still
was
help.
mine was in the same boat, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely something that he's very capable of doing, and that's another key thing you bring up there is eyes on the prize. Safe grabs are not nearly as safe against this model if it rolled good power on the first round.
Yeah.
So while I think they're still valuable, they're definitely, you're not getting shot by the rest of the Guardians on the team, so it's just CGR who's going to hit you. CGR probably still has a good chance of hitting you. Yeah, that brings it
I will
down
say
to
though,
five.
safe grab's still good though if you can get the objective farther back, because CGR can't actually pick up the objective himself. So if he drops it, someone else on your team might be able to pick it up pretty safely. So as far back as you can get the objective is still useful.
That's true. Yeah, you can keep it out of your opposing team's hands. So especially if there is an odd amount of extracts in the middle of the table, um, at the very least you're scoring equal. That in that case, you're not scoring down, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, now that we've kind of taken a look at CGR and what makes him particularly a bit of a problem piece. I guess the next thing to kind of talk about is some of the models that are particularly effective in it, models that might be worth splashing to play against him, or if they're in your home affiliation, at least worth kind of considering as that 10th roster slot just for when you see him on the other side of the table, or even just models that are just generally good. Um, so I mean, going through the list, and obviously we're gonna miss some. There's gonna be a lot of different models in the game that can answer this in very different ways. I kind of see a few outliers right out the gate. Notably right here in Black Cat and Beta Ray Bill. Beta
Yeah.
Ray, as we already mentioned, very very bulky model, should be able to withstand one, if not two, attacks from CGR. He's capable of that eyes on the prize play, so he can safely grab middle line extracts and keep them away from your opponent's team. And he's yeah, like the immunity to incinerate is huge. He's got a size 4, well, but we only care about 3 in this case. Medium character throw, so he's going to force CGR to be spending some of that power to get back into the fight, which, if he spends too much power and then he doesn't roll good on that power up thing, he's really not all that scary if he doesn't have the psychosis token.
Also,
Um,
reducing the times he can spend is really good too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if he's spending his power to get in, that means he's probably not spending his power to drop a 12 dice mystic on you, which turns out that'll kill a lot of things. So Beta Ray is great for that. Similarly, Black Cat, she is just a stagger bot. She's got a 2 cost stagger. I've been seeing a lot of people running her with no matter the cost lately, so she can do it right out the gate. It's range 3. It can only deal up to 1 damage, so you're not powering him up by doing this. Well, a little bit, but not much. And she's also got the you can't modify your attack dice against her, and you don't explode your crits. So suddenly, not being able to explode the crits, not being able to use wing it, actually means she has pretty decent odds to survive him as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's very unlikely CGR can one tap her with a basic.
Yeah, I think 2 he might do it on average, but 1 no. And if CGR is spending both of his turns just trying to take down Black Cat, and the main reason she's there is just to stagger him, she's doing her job. And if she got the stagger off, then hey, guess what? He can't double tap her.
Very
So
true.
Yeah, I think she's a fantastic answer to him, as is wherever it went, Beta Ray. Also kind of up high on the list here. And if you see any that I'm skipping over, by all means, jump out on them. But Captain Marvel in both of her forms, I've heard people actually leaning towards the older one. And the main reason for her is just because she can survive him very well. Um, the old one specifically, adding 2 dice to the defense rolls, becomes 5, 6, 5, and then reverse pierce on energy. So as long as it's not that spender, you're turning his dice down, which is absolutely huge. I mean, I think his odds to take out a binary form Captain Marvel are actually really bad. Like even with a double tap.
Yeah, I think you'd need the spender to reliably do anything to her.
And that is where the problem with original Danvers comes in is I mean 5 dice is great on the Mystic defense, so she still has an okay chance to survive that spender, but no reverse pierce or defensive tech against it. Whereas New Carol has the reverse pierce on Mystic as well, which is a point in her favor there. But I think overall, if you're expecting mostly gainers coming at you, then Old Carol's probably a little bulkier. Personally, I go
She
for New
for
Carol, just because she's got the like she's got a better rounded kit. She can do stuff outside of that, so that's why I run her. But I've seen a lot of people running Old Carol now. You mentioned Colossus before. Any, I mean, you there's the obvious kind of he's got a damage reduction and he can't be pushed, so he's not being lit on fire. He's going to be reducing damage. Um, any other
and he,
kind of plays with him you think that are valuable here?
yeah, so like he's got a couple other things. So he can add dice on physical RNG on the front side, and on the flip, he really becomes obnoxious because he counts blanks, which is also huge if he
Yep,
can't be incinerated by CGR.
100%.
Uh, and his spender does have a wild stagger, and an auto stun, which both conditions CGR is not a fan of.
So yeah, I think that's another big thing to touch on there is conditions that'll really hit him. I mean, we mentioned stagger with Black Cat, but also stun being one of the conditions that he's not immune to that really punishes that model because it means his power roll at the beginning is most likely just 1 power. Um, and if he's only gaining 2 power per round, he really can't afford to be spending anything if he wants to keep that psychosis token going.
Yep,
So
which means more models of yours that are scoring. So it's
100%.
really strong.
I think to
Um,
some degree, although you don't really want to be powering him up by punching him too often, even the strike having a concussive force is nice in that regard.
yeah, that can help too. And even just forcing CGR, like he's going to be able to get outside of your big brother, like the too dangerous to
Yep.
ignore, but it's still something he has to acknowledge and have to actually place around,
Well,
which is
and spend more
difficult,
power, right?
and spend more power. Yeah,
And every bit of power he has to spend to get around effects like this is power that he's not spending on pulling your models, lighting them on fire, or God forbid, spendering. Um, so yeah, I think that's quite good. Speaking of conditions that kind of keep him on the ground, I think Crimson Dynamo is another model that's kind of solid into him. You've got Wild Shock, which is another condition that he absolutely hates. Turning that 6 dice builder into a 5 dice feels really good. Um,
oh yeah,
he hates it, and it's a good way with something like Dynamo to kind of bait out the Crew of the Milano early because that's the card that removes conditions, right?
yeah.
Yeah, because obviously one of the big problems with saying, "Oh, I'm just going to condition him down," is that they have Crew the Milano, so they're going to make him immune to conditions for a round, and they're going to remove any that are on him, which is obviously really annoying when that's one of the main counters to the model. So having a model like Dynamo who can, semi-reliably get that shock out relatively early in the game, maybe bait out that card, and then you go in with something like your Colossus or your Black Cat, depending what sort of list you're building to put those other conditions on him, those really meaningful ones like stun. Because I think out of the three, shock is probably the one he's able to deal with the most. I could be wrong there. Maybe it's stun, but I think shock is the one that affects his kind of turn to turn the most or the least rather.
It
Um,
does, but he's probably not spending a turn shaking it, which means it's still going to affect him
that's
pretty
the
well.
big thing.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, like if he basically throwing the shock out on him super early either means he's gonna bait out the Crew of Milano, or the next turn he's a little less effective. And once again, Dynamo's another model that can kind of take a punch from him. He's got 6 health with a reduction, which brings him to that nice line of like, okay, he actually has pretty decent odds to survive. Um, and then disruption field on top of that, he's either going to spend power to get out of disruption field, or you're going to be able to reroll two of his dice, which is less effective against a model that counts skulls as successes, but is still a very effective ability just in general. So I think Dynamo's up there. Who else
Oh, I
would
would like to
you?
shout out Crossbones, new ones.
New Crossbones. All right, I haven't actually played with New Crossbones yet, so this is all you.
So, I'm not. This also somewhat applies to old Crossbones, but old Crossbones is not the greatest. But with new Crossbones, he's 6 health and 5 stamina on the back. He's
Yep,
got a damage reduction, which is huge.
yep. So you
Yeah,
got that nice part.
he has less energy defense, which is not great. But the main thing I want to talk about is his Cabal card, Diggin, which you play during the power phase, and he cannot be moved by any enemy or allied effects. Meaning, if you play this potentially first turn, is sometimes something I like to do, and then he can walk up, grab something. He's not getting pushed or incinerated. This card also gives him full rerolls on his dice. It means like CGR is going to have to put a lot of effort into taking him out that turn.
Yeah,
Uh, so
yeah. No, that's
he's.
actually quite a solid card specifically for this world with CGR being such a menace.
I will say it feels fantastic on Scoundrels too when CGR can't contest the objective.
Yep,
So you get cover as well, and you just can't be moved off of it.
yep. You can't be moved. It's also unrelated, but this is also probably a decent answer into stuff like deception because I believe that's also would prevent that.
It does, yeah.
That's awesome. No,
Yep.
that's pretty cool. It's nice to see Crossbones getting a little bit of love. Because yeah, I agree. He's got that nice, 6 health damage reduction. It is only two dice, but if you give it full reroll, suddenly that's not that bad. Unfortunately, his throw is only size 2, so he can't displace him at all. But that's not the end of the world. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think this is a solid model for that.
Yeah, it's more a model that just can survive and do objective stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a solid piece to be bringing there. Um, I think Emma Frost is worthy of a mention here. We mentioned her earlier, but just because of that shield mind, being able to
Yep.
stop him from pushing. Once again, he is allowed to just try again, but if you can force him to spend 4 power to pull one model instead of spending 4 to pull two, that's definitely worth it. Or, if you have the power to just keep trading that power because it is more valuable on CGR than it is on Emma. Um,
Absolutely.
so, yeah, stuff like that's really good. You could fish for the bent will to try and misposition him a little bit. I don't think that's a huge deal, but it is a thing. Um, yeah, I think she's got a relatively solid kit for dealing with him there. Jean Grey is in a similar vein. She has is hers the exact same?
Exact same, yeah.
Cool.
She does generate 3 power a turn though. So.
Oh, so she's better at kind of yeah having the power to do it. So that's
Oh,
good.
I will also like to mention Ebony Maw.
Sure.
Um, so the thing about Ebony Maw is basically you have to spend 2 power, otherwise he uses Mystic defense whenever you target with him attack. CGR never wants to be doing that.
That's very true.
And even if he does, he still has 4 energy defense. And on top of that, he also has his card,
Oh
which
yeah, that can.
is absolutely shut down his chains for a turn.
Yeah, that's actually really good.
And Ebony Maw can also do this turn 1 because he naturally generates 3 power. So
Yeah, no, that's quite solid. I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, he really doesn't want to be spending that extra 2 power to bypass your defenses there. And if he doesn't, I mean, yes, you probably still take damage, but 6 dice defense and a 7 health means I don't like his odds to even two-shot you.
nope. And if he's trying to pull you, you can always play and stop that, which is
Yep.
pretty good. So
Yeah, no, that's a solid answer to him right there. And of course, Ebony Maw's being splashed around a lot of places now with the changes to the stones, so he's pretty relevant right now. So yeah, that's a good call out to him. So here's an interesting one that I've heard a few people talk about is how do we feel about some of the big boys like Hulk and Tomb? Personally, I think they can be a bit of a trap because if Hulk is being lit on fire, Hulk is dying very quickly, especially to a Guardian's gun line. But I've heard some people say they like to bring the big brawler and they just kind of, go for the kill on CGR with them. I know you don't
So
really play the big brawlers, but
no. So if you have a way of protecting Hulk, maybe I'm still kind of concerned about it because CGR does have tech to get around that. But
yeah, that's been my concern because I mean my list for anyone who watches things like the tournament recaps is usually kind of a very bodyguard focused list. I've got Captain America, I got Luke Cage, I got those types of models in there. But CGR is very capable of kind of playing around that with the chains. He can pull your team apart, not only light them all on fire, but also pull them out of bodyguard ranges and stuff like that. Um, so he's very good at playing around that kind of tech. So I'm very scared to bring a Hulk into a CGR, and now I've seen twice. Now, admittedly, one of them sounded very dicey, but I've seen twice where She-Hulk, who's technically even better defensively, arguably against CGR, just because the natural for energy defense. But I've seen a couple times now where She-Hulk got taken off the table extremely early into a game, like we're talking first activation of round two, um, because CGR pulled her in, got a few shots off himself, and then the rest of the Guardians just went in and just pepper sprayed damage onto him or her. And I think it's a really big risk, especially those single health pool models against um, Cosmic Ghost Rider. But on the other hand, if you're trying to actually kill Cosmic Ghost Rider because he has four dice counting skulls on defense, they are some of the most effective at actually dealing damage to him because you're just throwing too many dice that he can't block them.
yeah,
So
it's
I
true.
think there's an argument for them. Actually, we kind of skipped him here, but another model that I think is actually weirdly good into him is
Oh
Ghost
yeah.
Rider.
Yep.
So Ghost Rider, of course, being 4/4 defensively and 8 health, he's not dying in, probably not even dying in two shots, but never say never, especially with winging it. But notably, he's doing a couple things CGR doesn't like. He's throwing out hex conditions, which CGR is immune to, so never mind that part. Um, the big one is the penance stare. The penance stare is really, really effective against CGR because you're draining him power for damage that you deal. So if he's been trying to be careful with his power and make sure he's always getting that psychosis back, this is the turn where you can kind of be like, okay, now we're gonna actually try and hit this model, and not only are we going to deal damage to it and get it closer to being dazed or KO'd and off the table, but we're also gonna drain some of his power, so he's not gonna benefit from us punching him, and his odds of going into psychosis next round are severely lowered, right? If he's sitting on, I don't know, 3 or 4 power at the end of his turn, and you can go hit him with a penance stare, that's only an 8 or 9 dice penance stare, but odds are you do 1 or 2 damage, and that means his odds of getting psychosis back are not good. You're also immune to incinerate, which is nice. um, but yeah, I think
Also, his respawn card. Get what it's
yes,
called. But
yes.
yeah.
Deal with the devil is obviously also a good answer to him. Um, I mean, if he tries to kill Ghost Rider, Ghost Rider is coming back. So there's no point in him trying to kill Ghost Rider, at least not until he's went and plinked off all of your other models. So yeah, he kind of has to just let Ghost Rider do his thing, which means Ghost Rider's going to go around. He's going to absolutely murder Rocket and Groot with all those energy attacks. He's probably going to deal with Star Lord pretty handily as well. He might have a harder time into some of the bulkier guardians like Beta Ray or stuff like that, but he's gonna run a riot on some of the softer members of the team. So yeah, Ghost Rider is actually surprisingly a pretty good answer into Cosmic Ghost Rider, and of course Cosmic Ghost Rider is also somewhat an answer into Cosmic Ghost Rider, but we're not going to go into that. Um,
I'd
so
also like to give a brief mention to Hela.
sure,
Just so she's another eyes target, but on top of that, on her flip, she can spend soul tokens to not die, which can be pretty annoying for CGR.
that's true. Yeah, I mean, he's also in that weird boat where she has just enough health that I don't love his odds to actually one-shot her. So
Yep.
if he's putting 2 activations into her just for her to come back, that feels a little bad. And she's gonna gain souls really fast because he's murdering everything else on the field.
So she's
Um,
going to hit harder into either hit him or his teammates.
yeah, no, so that's pretty solid. Um, Yeah, no, I like her there. She's good, and she's another safe grabber with eyes on the prize, which is nice. Um, and we already mentioned Jean Grey and Juggernaut briefly, so I don't think there's much more to say on them. Um, I mentioned Luke Cage. I think he's relatively solid into that matchup as far as three threats go. He can take a punch pretty well, which is good there. Let's see who else is a good kind of answer to him. Just going down the list here. Do we want to talk about this lad? Um,
um, if you get the Yahtzee, maybe. Actually, no. Actually, sorry, no.
I
I do
sorry,
actually
yeah,
like
I don't even think that's what you're going for. I think you're going for
I
haha.
take that back. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry,
Um,
you're right. The stun.
yeah, no, I think guaranteed stun after damage is dealt. Now mind you, it's if you're not within two of the target character, which means you need to have been at range three and not teleport in, I believe.
But you can
No, never
teleport
mind.
away.
They're the same timing. So you can choose
Oh,
to apply stun and then teleport in.
excellent. And you
Yeah,
can definitely control it with your
Bamf.
Ungala. But oh no, wrong.
Oh,
Bam. I was reading the
Bamf.
wrong one. Yep.
Yeah, no, so I think Nightcrawler is actually quite a solid answer there. Just, really easy to apply stuns, and then just walk away. Stop punching him, don't power him up. Walk away, punch someone else. Um,
And if you need a turn where you need him like dazed, he does have a chance of doing that with Brimstone Blitz.
Brimstone Blitz, I think, has pretty decent odds to just keep it going. Yeah.
Yep. So
So yeah, if you're
he's a good
running
show.
this under, Storm X-Men or something where you get that extra teleport, you can consistently throw at least 15 dice at him with Brimstone Blitz, seven and then eight. That's assuming you don't hit the trigger on either of them. So yeah, no, I think he's quite solid for that. So let's see. We got Nightcrawler. Um, Obviously something like Pyro unfortunately doesn't do much here. So Sentinels, I
No.
do think are actually a semi-worthy call out here. Um, Specifically Sentinel Prime because he's a little bit more splashable than say your standard Sentinels. Um, but he can kind of play that game as well. He's got the can't be advanced or pushed by mystic attacks or superpowers, so he's not being pushed by the thing. He's got the extra Mystic defensive tech, which is fine against his Spender if he ends up trying to use it on them. He's got a massive health pool and four energy defense, so he's surviving those builders pretty well. And yeah, I think in general he's just a solid model for that matchup. Suppression protocols can help you hand out shocks. Those are mildly useful if you're going to try to kill him anyways, because I don't think you want to throw nine dice at him if you're not trying to kill him.
Yep.
Um,
And
but
also pattern analysis can help your model stay alive.
yep. Oh yeah, because that can be used defensively. So actually, yeah, that's quite good. And then I think kind of what one of the ideas with this is you kind of can save Sentinel Prime for later in the round, and then you can kind of use restraint cables to help mitigate some of their. Now, of course, Sentinel Primes is only once per turn, not once per target per turn. Um, so you can only do it once, but you can still kind of use that to help mitigate anything that he's displaced off of your points. You can displace some of their models back. And because Sentinel Prime has this reasonably good defensive tech in this matchup, I think he's got relatively relatively solid odds to stay alive till the end of the round, even if you kind of just, have him sitting in the middle roughly of the table. Unless your opponent's going all in on him, in which case that's kind of okay. Um,
Yeah, it's
so
requiring resources to take him out.
exactly. Regular Sentinels, in the same way, do the same thing. They're just unfortunately not as great as splashes. But if you really, really need the budget version of it, it does work. They're still 4/4/4 with 7 health. They still have the same defensive tech. Um, Obviously, we're gonna gloss over the fact that their flip side leaves a lot to be desired, but they do exist and they are reasonably good into that matchup. So, who else is kind of worthy of a mention here? Well,
Um,
we I think it's time we mention the big
Ultron.
one here. So
Yeah,
Ultron
Ultron.
is really good into this matchup, I think. He's got first of all solid defensive stats. 4, 5, 8 stamina, Mystic, he's got the reverse pierce, And he also has that cannot be pushed or advanced by special rules. So he's not being pulled, so he's not being lit on fire. So these defensive dice are not getting worse. Um, yeah, this is you've played a lot more of this model than I have, so I'll let you kind of take him from here. But this model
Yeah,
does a lot.
so I will also say he's a really good control piece as well. So
Yep.
he's probably not doing it so much against CGR, but once CGR kind of goes, because he likes going kind of near the top of round, um, you can control the rest of their models off the points and help your team score faster to outscore CGR. Um, he also just hits fairly hard, so if you really need to go into CGR, he can do that as well.
Yep.
Um,
Or like with the Ghost Rider thing, because your CGR is really going to want to ignore this model, so you can just have this model go and say, all right, well, Rocket and Groot aren't playing this game. Neither is Star-Lord. Neither is whoever.
Absolutely. And then yeah, Age of Ultron is a very good card against CGR. On his flip side,
Yeah. So I think Age of Ultron is kind of the big one here of just like this card is going to be brutally good. I mean, it's just brutally good in general, but like CGR's game plan at the end of the day is to try and take as many of your models off the table as possible. And Age of Ultron basically says if the Ultron player is being smart with his power and he's staying at a very high number, or you know he's making sure you don't have enough to power Cosmic Penance Stare, and has enough when you deal damage, then Ultron's not leaving the table. And not only is he not leaving the table, but he's fully healing himself. He's teleporting to better locations, and that's obviously one of Ultron's biggest downsides. Um, and yeah, he's just gonna continue being ready to run a riot on that Rocket, Groot, Star-Lord, and anything else that you have.
yeah,
So
it's huge having an unkillable 5 threat essentially in that matchup that can just control the rest of the board while CGR goes into other targets.
yeah, no, I think he's incredibly good for that matchup. Actually, one interesting thing I just realized with the Ultron drones, when they explode,
Yeah,
um, it is optional, eh? Yeah, because it's a
it is
superpower.
optional.
That's
Yeah,
that's really important because otherwise I was gonna say, can he like power himself up by blowing them up? But no.
no, no.
Thankfully he cannot. So yeah, no, I think Ultron's a very solid answer into him. And heck, you could even try to position those Ultron grunts to prevent some pushes and stuff on your own team. That's a little hard to do because of the way he can move around, but again, forcing him to spend power is always good. So
Still relevant.
yeah. No, I think Ultron's probably one of the better answers to him in the game right now, just overall.
Yeah.
Do we have any other kind of noteworthy mentions here? I think we've
Uh,
reached the end of the list. I think it's worth acknowledging that cards like Exceptional Healing or Odin's Blessing are incredibly good. Um,
yep.
just because of the nature of those cards and when it comes out, Xavier's Dream. Basically just being able to say, I acknowledge that you double tapped my model that should die to a double tap here, but I refuse. I think that can be really good. Um, and yeah, I think from a more general perspective, because we kind of talked about a lot of specific models there, but from a general perspective, models that can hand out those three conditions we talked about, that shock, that stun, and that stagger, especially if they can do it consistently and relatively easily, and then models that have, I feel like, kind of 6 health with a damage reduction or more than 6 health is kind of the sweet spot for defensive against him. I think 5, you're running a little too close to his odds to one shot, but I think effectively 7 health or higher is kind of what you want to be running mostly when you're seeing him across the table. I don't know if you have different experiences if you're happy to run 5 health into him or
Only way like I'm kind of okay with 5 health is if I'm just running a bunch of 3 threats and the 5 health model is one I'm kind of okay with maybe going down. But ideally, like it's stuff I can spread out. Um, and even then, I like the 5 health model to usually have some form of defense attack to make it kind of harder to one shot.
Yeah, like
Um,
we talked about Black Cat. She's only 5 health, but she's got that crazy, you're not going to use winging it on her and stuff like that. So,
I also say stealth is can be a bit useful too.
For
It
sure.
forces him to spend more power to get to them. So
Anything that's going to force him to spend a little bit of power is a good thing. Because one thing that I always screw up on CGR is that while his attacks are range 4, his pull is only range 3. So if you can, he can't pull you into stealth range if you started at range 4, um, which is kind of a weird anti-synergy in his own kit. Once again, this model honestly not even that good. But yeah, so no, that's a good one. All right, so we talked about a couple of the character specific cards, but are there any other tactics cards, specifically as far as restricted cards go, that you think are especially valuable in this matchup? I mentioned Indomitable near the beginning. I think Indomitable is quite valuable here because again, just forcing him to try to pull you again, you know, watch his power. If he has 4, acknowledge that he's still going to be able to pull you, but especially if he only has 2, or even if he only has 4, and this means he's leaving himself on 0 at the end of the round. Um, I think Indomitable is very worth bringing into him.
yeah, it can definitely be good.
Anything else? How do we feel about Sacrifice with him?
I actually still like Sacrifice because it's would be serving a similar purpose to Indomitable here. It's forcing the pull.
Yep.
And since it's like any model that's threatening the bodyguard, it's a turn by turn thing until like eventually it's gonna be used against something, even if it's not against CGR in particular. But it's still forcing him to play around it until it gets used, um, which is
Yeah.
still relevant.
No, that makes sense. Um, yeah, that's pretty solid. Um, okay. Is there anything else really as you can think of tactics cards wise? I can't really think of anything else that's particularly crazy against him outside of
Well,
those.
in affiliation, going to stuff like Wakanda, like Vibranium Shielding, can be pretty good.
For sure,
Um,
in affiliated defensive cards can be really solid against him. One thing you got to be careful for with Vibranium Shielding is his ability to rearrange the board. He can kind of pull some models in or out of range, but still
yep.
quite solid.
Yep. Same vein, kind of. A Force can play a okay game against it with
Yep.
the one that stops them from being pushed, I believe, and then they also have a defensive one as well.
Yeah, so Stalwart Determination, oh yeah, Stalwart Determination combined with A-Force Assemble on the same turn. So you can't be pushed for the round, and then you also, while you're within range 2 of A-Force models, you gain an extra defensive die for each A-Force model within range 2 of you.
Yep.
Yeah, that actually makes a very good wall. Again, I don't know how I feel about specifically She-Hulk in that matchup being the leader of that affiliation, but you do also have access to both Carols, so yeah. Um, yeah, no, I actually think that's a really nasty turn for him. Um,
I would also like to mention to stuff like X Force or Criminal Syndicates. Shadow Organization, I believe, is Criminal Syndicate's
oh, the
version.
range 2.
Yeah, range 2, where he's got to get within range 2 to get you.
Yep, he's. I
Useful.
mean, with the pull, it really does just mean range 3, but still quite solid. Especially if you combine it with cards like fallback or escort to safety, so you can get back out of that range again.
Yep, and then Criminal Syndicate to all according to plan can be really huge against him. Just taking that priority and
Yeah.
taking him down for a turn can be absolutely massive.
Yeah, and I think that's another big thing we didn't talk about too much, and we are running tight on time here, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. But the kind of question of when do you try to kill CGR versus when do you try to ignore him and play around him, and I think that's kind of the big one that you just hit on there was the if you can take him down before he activates, if you can steal Prio from him, or if for whatever reason your opponent decides not to activate with him first, if you can kill him before he gets to go, it's 100% worth doing, even if you're powering him up for the next round.
Yeah,
Especially if he has the Psychosis token on him already. If he doesn't, then there's an argument to leave him, but yeah, if he's Psychosis and he doesn't activate first, and you see a reasonably good likelihood you can just take him down, I think it's 100% worth going for. Just be aware that it means he's going to be powered up next round. So, at that point, you want to either ensure you can do it again with something like All According to Plan, or something of a similar line to that, or just kind of be prepared to take a hit next turn. But the nice thing about him is even at that ceiling where he's sitting at 10 power, his his output is still limited to two models, and he probably doesn't kill two models even from 10 power, because the best he's going to do is a power cosmic penance stare and then a single blaster and, pull some dudes and light them on fire. Um,
Yeah,
so like, yeah, the penance stare probably kills something. Let's just assume that it will. Um, but the blaster probably doesn't if you have a team that's relatively durable. So yeah, it's still, at his worst, he's gonna do bad things, but not much worse than what he's been doing on the previous rounds, anyways. And definitely not worse than him getting two activations. So denying him
yeah.
an activation is worth it.
I'll also say it's good if, like, again, going back to Crimson a little bit, but if you activate with a model that not only has a good chance of killing him, but can also apply something that ruins his activation even if you don't kill, like Ulik, Shattered Mountain, Shattered Bones.
Yep.
Either he gets an activate token potentially, or at very least he's getting staggered.
Yep.
So if you fail to kill, like, you're still doing something to him.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, to that regard, I'm always hesitant with Iron Fist, but Iron Fist is almost good into him. The only issue with this being if he keeps you at that range 4, he's just gonna kill him. 5 health, no tech at range 4. Um,
Yeah, that is the issue.
so it could be a little awkward, but if you can force him to be in range 3, or again force him to spend power to get out of range 3, um, Iron Fist is relatively solid there. I think just being able to threaten that activated token, say this is the model you have to kill, so the rest of my models are going to go do their thing, and then run something like a Luke Cage nearby, so you can even Heroes for Hire in one of the attacks or something. Um, I think there's a solid argument to that, but yeah, it's just kind of it's more of a cute tech thing rather than a I think this is an actual answer to him. Um,
Yeah,
but
you'd have to be very careful with it.
yeah. But yeah, I think. Oh, do we want to give Mr. Loki a bit of a shout out here too, just
So yeah,
for
Loki can do some interesting things. I don't know if you're running 5 threat Loki against him, like with one of the stones, because it means he's taking out a 5 threat if Loki does get taken out.
it's true.
Um, but Loki is really taxing on his power economy. Like mentioned before, he hates root, and Loki's root on a stick.
Yep.
Um, he counts blanks, which can be useful in potentially living him. Trickster, not ideal, but sometimes you can get into cover and stuff, which is also useful.
Yep.
And then on the flip side, no crits is absolutely disgusting against him. So he don't put an objective on Loki. To be clear, I would not trust him
Yeah.
with that. But just forcing CGR to deal with him or just completely draining his power is really good.
Yeah. No, I think Loki's actually potentially really good into him. Um, yeah. No, that it's of course it's one of those awkward situations where like you are 3 dice, 5 health. I'm a god is good, but
He's probably
it's
incinerating you,
he's incinerating you, so now you're 2 dice with blanks. I
but
don't
he is
love
spending
it.
power for it. So
He is,
yeah,
and you're forcing him to spend extra power to do it, which is really good. So, no, I do think Loki is a fun model to bring into him. Again, I don't think it's a hard counter or anything, but it is a good. It is in Loki's favor a little bit, I think.
it does it. Yeah, I still think he has uses against them, but yeah, don't be bringing him at 5 threat and don't hold objectives if you're doing that.
But yeah, so I think that's kind of most of the kind of counters into him. We talked a little bit about some strategies and stuff you can do against him as well. But like I mentioned before, we are running low on time, so I think we're gonna go ahead and call the video here. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. Let me know down below if I missed anything, if there's any models or strategies that you've been using that have been really, really effective against this Cosmic Ghost Rider here. I'd be very curious to see what kind of other models that maybe we haven't thought of, or maybe we just forgot to mention here, are being effective in this matchup, because obviously CGR is a big menace right now in the meta for this game, and so anything we can kind of find to help solve the CGR problem, um, is a good thing, and obviously share that with everyone if you can, so that way less people are salty about this model, hopefully, is kind of the idea here. But yeah, so I mean, with my luck, the day after this video comes out, we're gonna see a nerf for him anyways. And this video will instantly be dead. But yeah, Reed, thank you for joining me on this chatting about CGR. We've obviously both had a fair number of run-ins with this model at this point, and he's a menace, but he's certainly not unbeatable. He is something you can play against. Um, so yeah, I think that was kind of the idea here, was just to kind of stress that like there are strategies that can help mitigate the impact this model will have on the board. And unfortunately some of that does just kind of come down to, here's a list of really good models into them, run these. But there are some things like tactics cards and just general play styles, like, going wider and stuff like that, that can kind of help with that, and knowing when you should try to attack and when you shouldn't. So yeah, like I said, hopefully this is helpful to some of you guys. And yeah, that's about all I got for now. So once again, thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, have a great day. Peace.